I have a confession, I'm not a sci-fi geek. I've never even seen a Predator movie. To me, they were always just popcorn action. But Predator Badlands, it completely caught me off guard. Beneath the explosions, I found something deeply human, a hidden story about the ethics of being used and the magic of our flaws. It's not the movie you think it is. Hey everyone, welcome to Cinema Z. Let's dive into the mind-bending philosophy behind Badlands. Let's start with how this movie hits us over the head with the concept of being an instrument. We're introduced to these beings, Tessa and Tia, robots sent by an Earth corporation. Tessa and Tia have identical female features, and the rest of the crew are men with carbon copy faces, clearly spat out of some cold, soulless assembly line. Why? Because to the system they call Mother, you're not allowed to have an individuality. You're just a part in a giant machine designed to complete a mission. The terrifying part is that Mother views emotions as nothing more than source code. Tessa and Tia were given feelings, but not so they could live. Rather, so these emotions could act like a precise plug-in to make them more efficient on the job. Initially, they see these feelings as a gift. In a standout moment on the planet Jenna, Tessa fights to the bitter end to protect Tia. But once she's recovered and rebooted by Mother, threatened with being deactivated into a literal tin can, she starts seeing emotion as a bug. Tia, on the other hand, spends more time observing the planet's creatures and starts believing that this connection is actually a form of strength. This is where the movie cuts deep into our real lives. How often do we become like Tessa? How much have we allowed big systems, corporate culture, or even social media to program our feelings just to make us more productive? We're living in a world where love and grief are no longer human experiences, but tools used to drive us toward a specific goal. Immanuel Kant had this beautiful idea: we should never treat people merely as a means to an end. They should always be the end themselves. But in Badlands, Mother does the exact opposite. And this instrumental view isn't just for the robots. Look at Dek, our solitary predator. His whole mantra is, I hunt alone. He thinks being alone makes him strong. Honestly, Dek reminded me of the penguin. Remember how Penguin hid his mother away because he thought attachment was a vulnerability, the Achilles heel where an enemy could hurt you? Dek is the same. Based on his tribe's teachings, he sees mourning, grief, and love as bloatware, extra files in his brain that need to be deleted to make him invincible. But here's the massive paradox. Hate is the only file Dek leaves untouched, and hate itself is a toxic form of attachment. In fleeing the weakness of love, he becomes a prisoner of hate. He thinks he's free, but he's really just changed jailers. The same thing happens to Tessa. It's like Mother wiped every emotional file she had, except for the rage. Now, let's look at a subtle, formal detail you might miss at first. Early in the movie, when Dek and Tia team up, Tia has no legs, so Dek carries her like a backpack. They are back to back. Think about what that means. What one sees, the other can't. It's the literal physical embodiment of being an instrument. Dek uses Tia as an extra set of eyes, and Tia uses Dek as a pair of legs. They aren't two subjects understanding each other. They're just two puzzle pieces stuck together. But the movie shows us this isn't sustainable. This brings me to the magic of the flaw. Unlike almost every action movie where the heroes have to be perfect, Badlands finds perfection in being broken. Dek is an outcast because of a physical flaw, and Tia has lost her legs. On the surface, they're both losers. But it's exactly this flaw that creates the possibility for a bond. If Dek were perfect, he'd never need Tia. If Tia were whole, she'd never lean on Dek. There's a philosophical argument that only incomplete beings can truly connect. Parts that are perfectly smooth and round can never lock together. The machine-like perfection of Mother leads to total isolation, but the shared wounds of Dek and Tia create a new kind of tribe. Later, when Tia finally gets her missing half her legs and they stand side by side, their gaze changes. They no longer look at each other as tools. This is what philosophers call recognition. Dek realizes Tia isn't just a backpack, she's a free being with her own will. There's a brilliant bit of dialogue that completely flips our understanding of power. Tia tells Dek about creatures on Earth called wolves. In a pack, there's a leader called the Alpha. But here's the kicker. Being an alpha isn't about being the best hunter or the most violent. It's about the ability to keep the pack together and protect them. This is a huge lesson for Dek, who always thought power meant loneliness and cruelty. He learns that being a true alpha means responsibility for the other. We see this shift in how Dek relates to the nature of the planet too. Remember the scene with the snake, that wild creature with the rapid-fire venom? Instead of killing it, Dek feeds it. He shows empathy, and that dangerous creature becomes an ally that eventually sacrifices its life for him. Dek goes from being a tourist hunter, someone who just wants to pillage the environment, to someone who is friends with his surroundings. Look at his weapons at the end. He's not using that shiny cold space tech anymore. He crafts his tools from the stone and materials of the planet itself. His identity no longer comes from his genetic tribe, but from his own choice and his connection to the earth he stands on. But then we get to that ending. Dek finally kills his father and avenges his brother. He takes the cloaking device he's been chasing the whole time off his father's body. You might think this is him returning to the old ways, but it's not. That armor is now in the hands of someone who has learned what it actually means to be an alpha. Someone who is no longer a tool of the system. The final battle against Mother is a terrifying metaphor for our world today. Mother, whether it's Tia's creator or Dek's mothership, represents a system that wants to harvest immortality from the body of Bud, the baby Kalisic. How close is this to our reality? Systems that drain the future of the next generation just to keep their own old decaying structures alive. By the time the credits roll, we're left with two beings who might be physically incomplete, but they've achieved a spiritual autonomy that no algorithm could ever program. They aren't chess pieces anymore. They've learned how to stop being tools and start being human. Ultimately, Predator Badlands proved to me that even if you have zero knowledge of this franchise, you can still find profound beauty in cinema if you look for the human layers. It reminds us that in a modern world, trying to turn us into instruments, the greatest rebellion is to embrace our flaws and learn how to truly recognize one another. So, what do you guys think? Do you feel like we are becoming like Tia and Dek in our own lives? Do we treat people like backpacks just to get ahead? Let me know in the comments if you felt these deeper layers too. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive on Cinema Z. If you dig this kind of analysis, hit that subscribe button and give the video a like. Until next time, take care of yourselves and your connections.